this grand now, I can't rent this building. It's a bit damp and the walls are manky. But sure, I have the time now, there's no work on the go. If I can just keep your one in the hatch happy enough, I can get away with this, you know. I just make art all day. Sure, it's not my fault the country hit a bit of a nosedive. I was learning me 2 times tables when they were betting on their subprime loans. It's been a while now, and people are starting to take notice of this, and this place is getting its name out there. Jays is mad, isn't it? People actually like what's happening here. I reckon if I can keep this going, we could actually change this place a bit. Sure, one behind the bulletproof glass has no idea where that cushy government job. She's just moaning out just to deal with people. The tiger had her fully chilled, I'd say. There's a gang of us now, it's good buzz bouncing off each other. They have some crack with all the booze of these openings. Made a bit of a change compared to them boys in the Dáil Éireann anyway. Universal social charge. Ah yeah, mad social. Fair play, boys. Wouldn't it be nice outnumbered doing this for a living? Changing the rep of a place. Sure, you wouldn't think one of them fellas in the Dáil would take a look. But sure, if I said anything, you would realise I hadn't been looking for work.
Most interesting thing about our space is that we don't charge rent for in the studio. What we do is we have an agreement with a branch of the PHSE, you could call it, a mental health project. And with these guys we do 520 hours a year between us all in return for the studio spaces. So this in effect takes the money out of the equation, which for any artist leaving college, obviously, that's one of the biggest issues of how do I pay for our studio space. I have been told before the first 3 years when you leave college is the most difficult, just to keep that, and also just to get a routine, which I think is the most important thing. We have 2 main rules really for members, which are one, that members use the space to a reasonable degree, something which is kind of hard to quantify in some ways. You can't say sign in, sign out, like we're adults, so we can't really do that, but it's very much noticed if people are working or not. The second being that they attend their classes and do their work for the carer in a good manner also. We have a very simple application form which literally say what they want, give us a CV, some images of work. Again, a very important aspect for us is that we're not judging work on an aesthetic level, saying, oh, that guy's good, this one's brilliant. It's really about do we think people are suitable for the space in a social context also. And by that, when we bring people in, we give them a 3-month contract. So this gives us a chance to see how people will fit in. A full-time membership doesn't really give too many benefits in some ways, bar you aren't being brought up to be processed again, but it does mean you can join the committee, which is how we run our organisation. Basically, you're looking after day-to-day running administration applications. And also we do a couple of open days or shows a year, so everybody is expected to participate in that and help out around the place.
From our point of view, we pay public liability, just to give an idea how much it is. It's been €380 for us for a year for our space with 2 events a year.
We are a cultural resource centre. We're located, as probably many of you know, across from Arthur's Quay. We don't have studio spaces as such, so we have residencies and things like that, but mostly what we do is we either have visual exhibitions, we have a lot of concerts there as well, we have a lot of events, we have theatre, the Orchard Theatre has been working really closely with us recently. How we operate is that we have a quite clear structure of who does what and that kind of thing. We have a director, Mary Conlon, who she sorts out, most of the applications and that kind of thing. She does everything from funding applications to painting walls, mostly applications, but other things as well. And we have project manager who coordinates the membership scheme. The membership scheme it's 15 euros a year instead of if you're a student, and this is how we get most of the money from. And from the membership scheme, you're entitled to apply for shows and things like that, but on events and stuff in the gallery. And also, there's 2 membership shows a year, which are curated by both international and Irish curators. But what I do is I work 1 day a week invigilating, kind of, if it's during a show I work 1 day a week, and there's probably be some sort of office jobs, kind of emailing, stuff like that. And if there's an install, we'd be kind of there all the time, you know, it's kind of like as much time as you can sort of donate. Or we all work on volunteer basis. Assistant, I do all sorts of things like installing the work, painting walls, putting together artist folders, posters, all sorts of things. Artists and curators, it's really fantastic because after spending like a week straight with someone, like, you know, you really learn how to work with people of all sorts, and you make connections as well that you can also make sure you have a particular role that you want to do, make sure like you know what it is exactly that you can bring to the space, because a lot of the times we don't even sort of know what's needed until someone comes on and goes, like we have Nick Brown who just finished the college last year, but she came on and she was like, I want to be a curatorial assistant, and we did not have that position before, and she was like, it's important to see how it works with your own practice. If you have an artistic practice as well, you always kind of need to see how you can juggle the two. And if you also have a studio space, you know how much time you're going to dedicate to either. As well, if you're applying for social welfare, you can't say that you're wrong there.
It was set up in 2009 by one Sam. We finished college, I was in his class, we finished in 2007, and he was looking for a studio space, and we went around to a few auctioneers and we viewed lots of different properties, and we found a lot of them weren't ideal really, but then we stumbled upon there's a house, there used to be a bar underneath, and we viewed it and thought it was ideal for studios, so we put a call out in POI, and myself and 10 others got together and set it up. Ramon left to go to England, and then I took over running from him, and basically continued running in the same manner that Ramon did, with a few changes here and there. But for private spaces, it's €85. Yeah, month, yeah. And we have an open plan area, and those spaces are 70, and we have some semi-private spaces, and they're 70 as well. Yeah, people come and go. We've had about 34 members. The procedure for looking for a space is just to email us images and statements. But I kind of look after whatever needs to be done, collecting rent, bills, filling spaces, whatever it is, day-to-day running things. The only responsibility of ours is to pay the rent. It's not even to use the space, really. It'd be kind of nice to have it that way, but for so long it was, you know, so hard to just build spaces. It's kind of risky because there's no insurance. It's very hard to get money out of people sometimes. I think it's a good place to concentrate on just your work alone. So that's just getting what everybody else does. And
so in 2009, when I was graduating, I think my tutor suggested that we apply for this open call. It was the Creative Limerick initiative thing. So they said, yes, we're interested in what you're saying, but we need a site. So what I did that summer then was I walked around and photographed the empty sites in town. Eventually, we found the site. The owner of the site was the husband of a lecturer here who knew me, you know, and so there was a connection there, and that connection filtered throughout for the last 4 years, you know, that we had a good working relationship. So I put in an application into something and did it, but I didn't actually have a team or a group, and in hindsight I would say that's probably a bad way to go about it, that you should have a core group with you, and straight away you can assign duties for that I was the chief administrator, and that you're kind of doing stuff like from painting walls to taking out the rubbish. The onus of responsibility was on the member then to just do their practice, but it started out like just little things like you're responsible for your workspace, you know, that you're keeping it clean. But then 3 years later you have to include something like this thing called a grievance clause, where if people are fighting one another, that there's a policy. It's all this precedent on precedent that you have to try and arbitrate between people. And like John said there, that they don't really mind about that if someone isn't using their space. But the Raggle Taggle site was, as far as I was concerned, it was state of the art and it was free. All you had to do was pay for menial utility bills. So then the payment is your time that you put in. Like there's this element, like I think Aaron is hitting on it as well, but it's a kind of a moral obligation because you're getting this facility from the city that I felt you had to give this kind of kickback back to the city. And that's where the conscious decision was made that Raggle Taggle would kind of host local community art as well as a platform for third year print exhibitions or third year exhibitions. Like our first third year show was Anti-Theme, which was a painting show. The site is meant to contribute then to the culture of the city, and in that way then the artists are responsible then for coming in and making work and putting on shows. Like the benefit for you to set up this site is extraordinary. Like that, not just having a free workspace, but this if it's a combi facility like a gallery and a studio, you have the opportunity then to make a site-specific show for your work, which is a really you don't often get that opportunity. It's like you have a constant bursary that you can work towards. And most members that went through put on, like, they were part of group exhibitions and they put on dual shows or solo exhibitions. There's obvious benefits for setting up a gallery, and like I called the gallery, like it was an open call gallery, and anyone could contact us and try and put on a show. And like the types of shows that we put on were like youth orientated projects or special needs projects, or like outsourcing shows from the Hunt Museum and stuff like that, as well as graduate shows and then solo shows. And like all this kind of, like if you've just hung your work now, and some of you might never have to use a plumb line or even drill into a wall or paint a wall. Like I was always joking that there should have been a module in college about how to paint a wall. These skills then, not just the practical skills of hanging and maintaining a gallery, but the network and administrative skills of dealing with a client, of actually going to someone and going, they tell you what they want and you work out those parameters and you're helping them. All these interactions, like from 4 years of doing that, where at first you would have had some trepidation about, I have to go and meet this person and talk to them, or I have to go and meet this group of people and talk to this group of people, but after a while it's just seamless with you. And that these type of skills, they feed directly into your practice. Because we all know that you're supposed to be able to talk about your practice and communicate your ideas coherently, and if you're being forced into these administrative positions, then it's a perfect training ground to go and turn around and then be very vocal then about what your art is about. Because ultimately that's what you have to decide then if you are going to get involved in these organisations. Am I an administrator, am I an artist, or am I something in between? And how do I make sure that one doesn't take precedent over the other? The trick there is that it has to have some module or model where there is an administrator, but that he has his chief whip or he has the bin man, this kind of thing. And people are happy with these roles. Like if you start up a group and someone goes, I'm just going to take care of the rubbish. Somebody else goes, well, I'm from a graphic design, VizCom background, and I'm going to do all the internet stuff. By having a contract and an agreement that you've all signed, it's just again sets the precedence for when, because it's very hard then to approach this subject because it's very touchy. You're going to go on, well, we're all here working away, and then you come in and you're not there, but you said here that you were going to be here, so see you later. But that's only in a scenario where I feel it is free. If you're paying €85 a month, you can do whatever you want with it. But if you're paying €8 a week, there's no contest there. That's my hardline attitude to it. I think in timeless tradition, I've just mowed through all my material and I've finished.
Just say one thing there. There's something we've found over the years is that sometimes people have a romantic idea that they want a studio, and we are the wrong place for that because we want lads to be using it. But it's fine if you're paying for a studio, as you say. Have a studio and you're an artist, But in our place, as in yours, we want people to use it.
It's actually
So, I'm Fiona Quill and I'm from Limerick Printmakers. I'm just going to talk kind of an overview of how we started our organisation and how we got longevity in it. We're 14 years old now, so kind of from the beginning to getting the funding to where we are now, and the problem with space and getting a space and how it can make things difficult. So basically it was founded in 1999 by Melissa O'Brien, Claire Boland and Carrie Fry. Melissa kind of stayed the longest, the others dropped out after the first few years. They started it pretty much when they graduated. They went straight on to start the Limerick Printmakers, so they did their degree show and started setting this place up straight away. So basically it started out in Robert Street, and that lasted from 1999 to 2011. It was given to them by Joe Buckley, and Joe Buckley's sound, because they found him through mutual friends, and basically he gave them the building for a rent of €100 a year, so it was just piecemeal, something to put on paper to make it official. So it actually could make the dream of having this printmaking studio in Limerick a reality. Printmakers outside of this had only been in Dublin and Cork. So it made a really great location on the west coast for for people to actually print down the west coast. So basically the enterprise board gave the printmakers as well €12,000 to start them off, and that got them buying some equipment, got office and everything like that up and going. The building was in a bit of a state when they moved in as well, so they had to rip it out and paint it and do all the things that you have to do when you start up a space like this. So basically Joe then came in, he's a very keen interest in the arts, so he just wanted to support the arts. Then in 2003 the Limerick Printmakers started to get Arts Council funding, so it took 4 years of applications before any funding came through. Then 2004, 2005 and 2007 they started getting the minor capital grants from the Arts Council. So outside of the funding, which started off, I think their first one was about 20,000, went up to 30, then jumped to 40, and at the moment we're on 65. Our peak was in about 2009 when we got 82,000, and the minor capital grants then are injections of cash to invest in more equipment and software and things like that, so you can get somewhere between I think 15 and 20,000 for those. Then in 2007 we got an RFO status, which is regularly funded organisation. So you have a lot of the bigger arts organisations getting that, which gives you a bit of security. You know that every year you're going to be regularly funded. They gave us that because they saw us as culturally strategic in Ireland, our location and what we were doing, which is a studio and a gallery. Okay, so what made us appealing to the Arts Council to get this funding? So basically our studios were the main thing. The gallery is just an aside, they didn't really care so much about that, it was the studios. The strong membership record that we have, so we have between 45 and 55 artists in every given year. The gallery is a bonus, as I said, but not a deal breaker. Showing our members on an annual basis in the gallery and creating revenue streams for them was important to the Arts Council. They want to see that the artists can start to financially benefit from an organisation like this, and being able to produce our own revenue to supplement funding and have a strong education and community focus. So that's what the Arts Council were looking for from us. They want to see that we're involved in the community. They want to see that we can also have an education resource as well in what we're doing. Okay, so the development. So 2012 saw us changed into a limited company. Up until this point, Melissa was a sole trader. So this was her company. So she was liable for all debts, anything that happened in there, all members, gallery, everything. So the Arts Council encouraged us strongly to change over to a limited company, which we finally got to do in 2012. Then this year we got charitable status. Once that was all sorted, Melissa felt she had done her time and she left as director. So now Mary O'Dea is the director of the Limerick Printmakers. Also, working in an organisation like that is very draining. So, 13 years of being a sole trader, being responsible for so many people, she had burnt out and, her time was done, and she'd done a brilliant job to get us where we were. So basically now, our debts are protected because we're no longer run by a sole trader. So the board of directors basically take responsibility for anything like that. We also get rate reductions now in whatever building we're in because we've charitable status, and we can work with larger companies, and we can have a professional board of directors as well. So when I say professional with companies, I mean like the likes of the art college now. We can facilitate them for modules, for talks, things like that, and we can have proper paper transactions so they can work through us because they can get that back and all that. Okay, so the management structure, basically we have a board of directors and there's 9 people on the board. About 30 to 40% of that is made up of educational specialists. We've got business people on it, we've got philanthropists on it, so people that can actually really guide the company in a very clear and strong direction now for the next however many years we exist. Underneath that, then the director answers to the board of directors. Then we have an administrator and technician. Technician runs day-to-day studio. Administrator then is front of house and also does, you know, the usual reception work as well. And then we have some CE workers as well. I think we have 3 at the moment. So, you know, that gives us also good standing with the city as well by having CE workers in there. Okay? So currently we're in Sarsfield Street. We went into Sarsfield Street in 2012. I think All Out Design were there before us, as we were talking about earlier. So we got the car out before we moved in. So Sarsfield Street was great. It was very, very different place for us to move into. We had to move out of Faber Street because the roof fell in. So the fire brigade said we couldn't stay there anymore. So that was really sad for us to leave because I suppose our contract with Joe was that, you know, we kept the day-to-day upkeep of the building going and kept it standing, and now it's derelict pretty much. There's a few people in and out of there, but you know, the building will start to fall apart in itself. So we had to move out. We went to Sarsfield Street, and Sarsfield Street is kind of a ready-made unit for us, really, really clean. We didn't have to do too much, paint a few floors and walls. Well, I didn't have to do too much, paint a few floors and walls, but you know, it was really, really fit to move into, straight away fit for purpose. So basically, the new space brought its own problems, obviously, because it was more money. So we agreed a nominal rent per year with the landladies, which was about half of, I suppose, commercial rent. So even less than half of commercial rent. So we pay in around 10,000 for the year to be in there. But then we came up against the rates, which are 21,000 for our space, which is crazy. So, you know, it's things like that in the city that as well, if you're getting a space, you come up against these problems. So trying to, you know, create more streams of revenue for this, so we had to come up with a strategic plan. So by changing to a company, we could place the strategic plan into action. So basically looking at education, members and revenue. So education, we're looking at 3rd level modules now, working closely with LSAD, and also of course our adult and children courses, which are really good streams. Members, so we want to develop our membership. Like I said, we have between 45 to 55 in any given year, but we could really develop our membership up to 100 comfortably. And increase production as well for the artists. We have the workshops, but as the lads were all saying there, you know, people might pay for their membership and everything, but it's getting them to come in and getting them to make the work, you know. So people take out memberships and you mightn't see them again for the year. So they've spent, our membership, an annual membership is about €300. So it's not bad actually when you break it down over the 12 months. But you might see people not actually coming in doing it. So to increase production, we've kind of put the carrot in front of the donkey by going more international with what we're doing. So last year we had shows in Berlin, London and Avia in northern Spain. So that obviously upped to increase in production for the artists because they want to do that kind of thing. And then revenue, so promoting the gallery and philanthropy. So philanthropy is an important part of arts organisations to try and get funding for people that have that interest in the arts. And we got it through Joe Buckley by giving us a building. But now, of course, we have to go through more kind of cash philanthropy routes. So I think that's it, and I kind of motored on very quickly there as well. So basically for us, it's about keeping the organisation together, keeping it moving on, keeping it growing. Our problem at the moment is that we are an expensive commercial building on a popular street, and we can see Raggle Taggle is just kind of moving out of that street. Every other unit around us has been rented, so we expect they're going to be rented pretty soon. So if our unit does get rented, we have no plan B at the moment, we have nowhere to go. So, you know, that's always a worry, and you don't want to be paying commercial rents in the city because the rent, I suppose, commercially, for where we are now, they'd be looking for between 30 and 40,000 a year. So we can never afford to pay rents like that. So, you know, it is the whole thing of having an arts organisation is trying to keep a roof over your head, which is really, really tricky.
Occupy Space is a not-for-profit arts organisation that was established in 2009 as an artist-led project and exhibition space in a slack space on Thomas Street, Limerick. This is a view of the units that we used on Thomas Street before we moved in, and it was accessed through the Creative Limerick initiative. The gallery provided an accessible venue for graduate, emerging and professional artists, facilitating events and exhibitions that promoted local artists while also programming exhibitions of national and international work to create awareness of Limerick as a hub for arts and culture, and particularly contemporary visual art. It was founded by the members of Wickham Studios. Again, there were 12 members, and I think Sean hit on some of the points there. Each of the 12 members had to invest a little bit of their own money to buy the materials in order to be able to put up the walls, paint the floors, and install the lighting. And that's partly constructing the interior wall. And in December 2009, we opened with the first exhibition, and it was curated by a small group of people who were running Occupy Space. For the first year, the programme of events was financially supported by donations from the public and fundraising events like an art auction where a lot of local artists donated their work to the auction and raised some funds to pay our bills. And we also had the annual Christmas balls as well, and the LSAD students were really good support because they were buying tickets. But all the money went back into running the space, to trying to build the identity of the gallery space and to reach a larger national audience as well.
So if you don't mind me putting in there, just another thing that you did was just charging lads like €1 for a beer, which before that people weren't doing.
Oh no, unheard of.
You know, people weren't doing that, but there was no hassle with people doing that either. So
there's a little bit of money coming in from those. So the programme of exhibitions and events was very energetic. Most shows lasted just under 3 weeks, and then a very quick install period, about 4 days. So for the 12 members, it was a little bit exhausting, or it would pull you away from your practice a lot. So eventually the two organisations became quite separate. Wickham Studios continued with its 12 members, but only the people who were really interested in running the space stayed on. So it reduced from about the team of 12 down to about 7, and it remained like that for maybe another year and a half. And that's an important thing. I think Anastasia hit on it earlier as well. It's like, why are you becoming involved in a space? Because it's not going to, for us, it kind of benefited the founders because we encourage people who are working with us to bring in proposals or to suggest exhibitions and projects. So a good few of the founding members would have had solo shows, but it's not a studio space, so a lot of your time goes into organising shows for other people, but it's a good professional development, so you learn a lot. So around May 2011 we hosted Influx, and I couldn't get an image for it here right now, but basically it was an alternative art fair, and it took over the 6-7 floors within the space. We had the 7 people involved on the board for Occupy Space at the time, so you need those kind of numbers to do those ambitious projects. But we also took on about 30 to 40 volunteers from the general art community. Some students as well popped in for invigilation install, and we actually had to do a big call out for extension links on Facebook as well. So we just didn't have the equipment. So there's a bit of an ebb and flow of people coming in and out of organisations like that, and you have to be a bit prepared to pick up the slack if there's a few people leaving. So we had received Arts Council funding for 2011, and we kind of launched, there was a rebrand as well on its way. So you can see there, it's got like the bright orange vinyl and the logo design. And we're lucky enough to have Sheena Flynn. She was doing her MA in Dunleary, and she took us on as a case study almost. This is just an example like of how we support local artists as well, because that's the main drive of the organisation. At that time it was to exhibit local artists, and we continue in that kind of ethos. So even though we don't have a more long-term space at the moment, we still do workshops, and we do have pop-up exhibition spaces, temporary venues, and we use other alternative venues to give opportunities to emerging artists and local artists. The next couple of projects as well. This is the Wood Between the Worlds. So that was an exhibition that I curated myself, and let me see, I've been volunteering with Occupy Space for a year up until then, and I've been director for about 9 months or so, and I felt like I had given a lot and I wanted to assess why I was involved. And I said, well, you know, when you're interested in curating or organising exhibitions, you should be doing a project yourself, and it doesn't happen until you say it's going to happen, so you just need to decide, and then once you've decided, there are small steps to making it real. But yeah, so with the Creative Limerick Initiative, you know, a lot of the spaces are privately owned, and you're there on a temporary basis until they're rented or sold. So it's something to be aware of if you do apply to Creative Limerick. And we were aware of it when Occupy Space started in 2009. It was initially a temporary project for about 3 months. There was no security past Christmas, but I don't know why we had invested so much in such a temporary thing, but in those financial conditions it didn't seem like anyone would buy the building or take it on because it's huge. We've been working in partnership with other venues throughout the city to deliver a programme of exhibitions and events. And I'd say it was about 2 weeks after we moved out of Thomas Street, we got a letter from the Arts Council to say that we had a project award for a 9-month programme. So we're in a bit of a pickle where we had money and we couldn't really leave it sitting there, and yet we had no venue. But Helen Carey from the City Gallery approached us, and she wanted us to put in a proposal for using the first floor of the Limerick City Gallery of Art for a 6-week exhibition. So at this point, I think we put together our own archive. We gathered as much information as we could on Occupy Space, because having that kind of crisis made us assess the other artistic activity in the city over the past 20 years as well. Found all our posters, our press releases, so essentially we kind of made our own history and handed it back to them and said, that's the record now and you can keep